Hello and welcome to the Crossing the Line podcast. It is I, National Treasure, Charlie Collicutt, and joining me, Jim Buff and Jawline, Oliver Rednall. Joining us today, nominee for Best Film at the BAFTA Scotland New Talent Awards for his short film Radiance, director for acclaimed BBC series Clique, as well as the comedy series Cold Feet. And now, for his career highlight drumroll, please, and absolutely no pressure, making his debut on the Crossing the Line podcast, Scottish director Andrew Cumming.
Wow, thank you. I'm going to have to try and I'm going to spend the next 40 minutes trying to live up to that intro.
He's been practicing that, you can tell. He's been practicing.
Yeah,
unfortunately, I couldn't do the drum. I was doing a drum roll on the table, but I'm not sure it comes through on the...
One second, we just dub that in.
Yeah. Sam will do it. It's fine.
Andrew, we were talking just before about, you say you're an edit at the moment of your feature, and just something I wanted to ask is, you say you want to just avoid all film and things because your brain is essentially fried by watching hours and hours. I mean, what is it, 12 hours a day you're probably working on it?
Sometimes it depends.
Yeah.
My editor Paolo has a dog, and so he needs to get away. And 12 hours, yeah. Some days, other days you kind of, it just depends what you've been working on and where you get to. And I guess sometimes you get to a point where the two of you want to kill each other. You're banging your head against the wall. And it's like, okay, we've got to walk away. Just abandon the edit suite until the next day. Yeah, but sometimes 12 hours.
But of course, it's a lot of time and a lot of energy, because it's not a case of you just sit down and then chat to your mate for a bit. You are solidly working and thinking and then rethinking, and it's an art form in which it requires a lot of entertainment. So when you come away from that, obviously there's a lot of pressure on directors and people in the entertainment industry to keep up with you've got to watch things, you've got to know what's going on, your peers, your friends. How do you manage your time when watching new films, like the new Oscar nominations and things that have come out? I'm like, God, I've got 4 more to watch, and it's hard fitting them in with everything else that you've got to watch and want to watch.
No, it's hard. I also have 2 children at home, so I've got a 4-year-old and a 18-month-old at home. And albeit I'm not at home right now because I'm in London, when I am home, there's no time, man. That's the one thing that I've realized, that the more successful you get in terms of actually getting to make stuff professionally, the less time you've got to watch stuff. So even like you'd say the Oscar films and everything, I mean, it seems like everybody's finding those really hard to come by anyway. Like, I don't know a lot of people that aren't in the industry don't know anything about, the Nomadlands and the Promising Young Women's, because hey, it's a pandemic and nobody goes to the cinema right now. So yeah, it's really difficult. I try and listen to recommendations and keep a note of stuff, but there's such a deluge of content, right, that I think now that the idea of completing Netflix is over. Like, there's no end in sight. I think what ends up happening is everybody gets kind of forced down their little rabbit holes. I tend to find the stuff that I watch on Netflix and whatever else is stuff that's been targeted for me. So it's harder to get a broader sweep of stuff. And actually, I don't know how you guys feel, but since the pandemic and lockdown and cinemas, I've kind of actually made a pact with myself. I wasn't going to watch any more movies until I could go to the cinema, because I just tended to find my attention span during lockdown was dreadful. I was more inclined to switch on The Last of Us Part 2 on my PlayStation than I was to sit and watch a movie for 2 hours. I just was missing that captive experience of being in a cinema without, the distractions of the dishwasher or my kid's just woken up from his nap or. So yeah, I'm sort of trying to stay away from movies actually until I can watch them in a theater.
Is that something filmmakers and TV makers, storytellers are having to take on board? I mean, I know we've got the Irishmans that are 3.5 hours long still from the Martin Scorsese, etc. But do you think that is something people are having to consider, that people's attention spans are different? Because the series are long now. There are 10 episodes, a lot of them, Ozark and things like that. But is that something you've experienced, that, or when you were learning, that something to be aware of?
I mean, you kind of look at what Spotify does, right? Like Spotify's killed the album, because everything now is about, you've got to get it in the first 20 seconds of that music track or people are going to go into the next thing. You would like to think that film and TV won't follow that pattern, but I know that Netflix already has the little, double play speed setting where you can speed up your watch. But
I read about that actually, and in particular comedy movies were saying no, you can't do that because it completely ruins the pace of our movies.
Of course,
I don't know what that is.
So
you
what
can
was
run
that?
you could run a movie at maybe 1.5 times speed or 2 times speed in order to
like
get
an
through
Audible?
it faster. Yes, like an Audible, for instance.
Really?
So you could watch the movie faster in order to get through the content quicker. But for movies like comedy movies, and I think
well, any film,
any
just
film,
comedy.
But I think the comic directors all came out mostly because they were saying the comedy's all about pace and timing. If you do it at double speed or slower speed or whatever, it is completely throwing out the work that we've done already.
Oh right, I did, and the other ones haven't done it. Amazon haven't done it yet.
I don't know. I read about it on Netflix, and I noticed it was in the bottom right corner when I was watching something. I was like, "Holy cow!"
This is crazy.
But throughout my watching films when I was a teenager, or then going to film school, and then getting out into the industry, in 3-act structure, you still have the inciting incident that usually happens in the first 10 pages, and that hasn't really changed. So I think there's still, whether you've got a series that runs for 10 episodes on Netflix, or it's something that's on terrestrial TV and you can flick off and do something else with your time, your job is still to be interesting and tell the story quickly and not mess around. That's still that's still part of the job, is to make sure that people don't switch off and don't go and do something else. But the harder question is, how do you get somebody to watch your show in the first place when there's so much content out there? Like, keeping them, hopefully you've done enough in terms of the casting and the storytelling and the cinematography and everything else that's going to keep them glued. But it's actually how you make a noise when there's just so much content. That I think is the tricky part.
With the work that you've done so far, how have you found your ability to work as from the artistic side of being a director against the, as you mentioned, production side of, I need this to be in the first 10 minutes so that they don't click off and go on to the next thing? How have you found that balance?
I guess, it depends on the type of filmmaker, right? You'll get some directors who don't go in for all that, inciting incident stuff. I do, the movies I watch and the movies I want to make, I don't, I kind of 3 or 5 act structure works for a reason, and it's worked for thousands of years, like all the way back to when Aristotle first kind of identified it. So it has even if you watch something like one of Alan Rene's films, like Hiroshima Mon Amour, or Muriel, or something like that, they still have 3-act structure. They just the chronology and the editing has been fucked with. Like, you can't get away from it. Like, there's a certain way to tell a story, and it's more about the form of it rather than the actual structure. So how you do that, in TV, how you deal with that is, when I do work for television, you approach it with as much passion as you possibly can. Obviously, you didn't originate it, so I often sort of describe myself as being a midwife, in that I didn't conceive it and I'm not going to raise it, but it's my job to deliver it, and to deliver it to the best of my ability. And hopefully you can find yourself on a project that you like the script and you can vibe off it, and it's something you would actually switch on and watch anyway. So that's and if not, and if you're being honest with yourself and it's not something you would watch, you've got to find something in it that keeps you hooked, and a challenge you set yourself, or an actor you've always wanted to work with, or whatever it is. You've got to find something that makes you want to turn up every day. Otherwise you're a hack, and then then you might as well phone it in. So that's I think, to go back to like how you balance the art and the production, I think that was the original question. You find those moments for you, but you understand that you're there to serve somebody else's vision. Like, that's the job, until you can get to a stage in your career where you're developing your own stuff and you can get that off the ground. But even then, you're still bringing in producers, and they'll have opinions, and it's still, you're still, I think, at the service of somebody else, but you do have more input and more say creatively, definitely.
When you work on a TV series and you only do a select amount of episodes, do you have to liaise with the other director who's going to do the other ones to make sure they're not hugely different, or does the producers do that? How does that work?
I mean, yeah, there's a sort of, on the shows that I've done, there's been a collegiate sense between the directors. There has to be, because a lot of the times you could be double banking. So, I can be directing whilst the other director's going, and you have to swap cast over. So you've kind of got to get on and make sure that it's a team effort, and you don't all sort of spit your dummy out and say, well, I need her for this scene and it's really important. You've got to try and find a bit of compromise. But really, it's the producer's domain. That's why in TV you have your blocks and you do your block, and it's the producer who's the overseer, which is probably why it's like that showrunner sort of template in television. Whereas I guess in film, the director is the overseer and is the showrunner creatively. But certainly in TV, I think it's obviously happening more now that more directors are doing a whole series of something, or a lot of filmmakers from sort of prestige pictures are coming into television, and they'll obviously bring a lot of clout and influence. But certainly for the majority of shows that are made, both here in the States, it's very much that showrunner setup. So it's their responsibility more so to make sure all the different departments are talking to each other.
And if you're not developing something yourself, like you say a film project, and you get a TV job, that obviously comes through your agent, right? Do they find that, because with actors, we're actors, so we know how they sub it to the casting director, and then they call you in the audition. Is it almost like that with the director? They look at your previous work, or they know you from something else?
Yeah, like when I got Clique, because Clique was my first kind of high-end show. Like before that, I'd done short films, and then I did some continuing drama in Scotland on a show called River City, which is the fancy word for a soap. So what I'd found was the guys at Balloon who made Clique, they were really interested in my short films, because that showed my creative voice, like my unfiltered, this is the kind of stuff I want to make, director mode. But then, having done 6 episodes or whatever of River City at this point was good, because it kind of made them feel comfortable that, oh, well, he's not going to have a nervous breakdown halfway through the shoot. And it reassures the financiers as well. It reassures the people at BBC One or BBC Three, okay, this director knows how to shoot a schedule and deliver something on budget, and be hired again, which means he or she is not a dick, which goes a long way. So that's, they take all that into consideration. It's like, what's their style? What's their aesthetic? Do they know how to get good performances? Can they tell a story visually? And then they'll look for character references to, like I say, make sure you're not, you're not toxic. So and that invariably comes through your agent. Your agent is out there like finding out what's happening, and how they can crowbar you in there to try and get a meet. And then from there, like on Clique, I had 4 meetings for Clique, because it was my first big show, and I guess they didn't want to, they wanted to take a chance, but they wanted to make sure they were measuring the risk, I guess, as you would expect.
You talked about influences just before there. Do you feel like you have some major influences from movies you've watched or TV shows that you try and bring into your directing approach?
Yeah, I mean, there's this one shot from Seven, David Fincher's Seven, where it's towards the end and Morgan Freeman's just opened the box.
Yeah.
And now he knows John Doe's plan. He knows all along, oh God, this is all going to go horribly, and I've left John Mills over there with the Detective Mills over there with the John Doe, and here's his wife's head. And he does this for the moment, to highlight the moment of realization. He does this whip pan, and as he whips, Morgan Freeman turns at the perfect time, and it's just whip, turn, and you get it all in that one shot. And I've tried like many times to get that. Basically, everything you watch, I kind of have that shot. It's just my little, it's my little sort of nod of the cap. to David Fincher. And yeah, because I love how if you can use the camera in a really simple way just to sell a beat or a transition, and just that the energy that gives at that point, it always just really stood out to me. So actually, in my film, The Origin, there's a moment where the character has something similar, and that's my little tip of the hat. I mean, we've all got them, right? And if you ignore them, then you're not being true to why you wanted to make movies in the first place. I mean, a lot of the films I watched in the mid-90s, you know, right the way through until I started film school, they're in the bloodstream, and to try and fight it would just be too hard. So yeah, I think, you know, as long as you do it respectfully and in the right moments, yeah, I mean, the influences it's all you've got, right? It's, yeah.
Was directing something you cognitively went, I want to be a director, or did you just find yourself doing things that kind of led you to it? At school, did you start learning about cameras or started filming your own things with the camcorder type of thing, and then was like, I'm literally becoming a director just in myself? Or did you go, what do I want to do? Oh, I think I'll go to film school.
Yeah, no, I was never that guy who was 8 years old and got access to a video camera. Just my dad was really into photography, and he converted the shed in our garden, tiny little shed, converted it into a photography studio. But being, I don't know, being a teenager and just being a bit full of myself, I thought everything my dad did was lame. So I took no interest in the dark room and processing photographs and stuff. I just thought all that was, yeah, boring. I wanted to play with Lego.
If anything, you just opened the door. It's too dark in here.
Yeah, exactly. All that
ruins the whole exhibition.
Yeah, exactly.
Just trying to load the film, like get it out and do it all blind. It's just like, this is impossible. Like, you need to be a magician. So no, I was kind of cursed with being able to draw. So I, from a young age, was doing little comic strips, and doing some creative writing. And it was just a hobby. And then I sort of went through high school, and I was encouraged by my art teachers to go to art college. It's like, art college, what? So we went to an open day art college, and Dundee Art College had an animation department. And I was like, oh, drawing and writing. Well, that's it then. That'll be me. I'll do that. So I did animation for 3 years after a 1 year sort of general course and art foundation course. And while I was doing animation, I realized, well, I can't do this. It's, 24 frames a second, and I didn't want to do all the computer generated stuff, because just sitting at a computer all day just felt like death. But also sitting at a light box all day and drawing. And I've read this interview with Matt Groening, the Simpsons guy, about all these illustrators and animators, they all go blind and get arthritis. Oh, God, this sounds awful. And you don't really speak to anybody. You're just in your little block and you're just doing your little drawings. And but so at the same time, there were some guys who were making like Evil Dead spoofs and stuff on mini DV cameras. So it was the first time I'd realized, oh, there's equipment now, and we can actually edit it on the iMovie, the IMAX that we've got in the animation suite. And I was starting to go to the Contemporary Art Centre and watch movies from abroad. I'd never watched foreign films when I was a kid. There was no access. So it was a slow thing of, okay, I kind of feel like I want to tell stories visually, but I don't want to do the animation stuff. It's just too, I think one of my things is I'm impatient, and I try and cover it every day on set, but I just found it was taking too long, and I like working with people, collaborating. So then I took one of these mini DV cameras and made my own film, because I'd been approached by the National Film School to apply for their animation course. And I didn't know we had a film school in this country. It's like, I thought you'd have to go to UCS or UCLA or NYU, all the ones I read about in Empire magazine, basically. I didn't realize there was a film school here. So I made my first short film for £50. And I applied. I got an interview, and Lynn Ramsey was on the panel. Oh, wow. I just, because she graduated a few years earlier, and she by this stage had made Ratcatcher, and
yeah, she went to NFTS, didn't she?
She did, yeah. And there she is, larger than life, asking me questions about were you inspired by Ozu? And I'm like, I've never seen an Ozu film, but I'll just
of course
faking it. You just faking every second of it. Didn't get in, obviously, because I was like, it was like something at Dickens, like this little punk from from the east coast of Scotland, like turning up, you know. So yes, but that was when I kind of felt like legitimately I went from the kid who draws comic strips in his bedroom to an animation degree. I made a short film. It was taken seriously by people, and I thought, well, okay, I'll give this a go then. So that was the turning point. There was no light bulb moment. It was just a series of steps of just following the things that I was interested in, and all roads inevitably led to, this ridiculous profession.
Well, I watched Ratcatcher recently. It was 1999, I think it came out. I was quite surprised at how long ago it was. It's really good.
Yeah, it is good. Really good. I think Lynn Ramsey's one of our best filmmakers, and she, I think she kind of got at one point tarnished with that social realism thing. It's like if you watch her work, there's no, it's not social realism. She's a really cinematic filmmaker, and she thinks in terms of her use of sound as well. She's fantastic, fantastic at what she does.
I think
she doesn't rush her films either, does she? She's very much, she chooses her projects wisely. When you actually look at her CV, she doesn't mind having gaps in between.
I was going to say,
what she does.
If you look at her CV of we need to talk about Kevin, or You Were Never Really Here, you suddenly go, wow, she does pick and choose what she does, and to great effect.
And she obviously doesn't mess around, because she was attached to do Jane's Got a Gun, the Natalie Portman Western. And, she obviously got a sniff that something wasn't right, and she backed out. And so you sort of feel fair play. Like if she's not feeling it, she'll walk. And then she makes, You Were Never Really Here with Joaquin Phoenix, which for me was a much better film than The Joker. And it was kind of similar themes, similar part.
I was going to say that they're almost the same movie in a way.
Yeah, basically, it's like, it's I don't know. The less said about that, the better. I just think
this is where it will cut in the edit.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Be doing something different.
Yeah, she's super talented, and so that just to get that kind of, just to be taken seriously by her is an amazing legitimacy for a kid in their early 20s. Like I got, my dad drove me to the National Film School for my interview, and I got back in the car, and he's like, "How did it go?" And it's like, I don't even care. Like, Lynn Ramsey's seen my movie. He's like, "Who's Lynn Ramsey?" So it was cool. Talk about defining moments. That was one of them. Yeah.
It's funny when you've got a career, especially in the arts, because people will see the shop window of it, but they have no idea. That's kind of what this podcast is about, really, like shedding the light on these things. Like your film, for example, you're doing at the moment, you're now in the edit. But when did you first start making that in pre-production?
Pre-production, or when did we start actually pen to paper on the idea?
Yeah, when did you start doing that?
That was September 2015. Was the first time we actually had a blank piece of paper and wrote down the core idea. But actual pre-production, we started in September last year, obviously in pandemic times, so everything was kind of remote, which had a lot of disadvantages that we had to overcome just by not getting to see each other in an office every day. But yeah, that was 6 weeks prep, 6 week shoot. We've been in the edit since mid-December. We're going to picture lock probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then the sound and visual effects and grade will take us through to late August. And then we'll look at festivals. So yeah, it's a year from sort of pre-production to end of film, but you add in whatever life the film has after it's finished and delivered, and also the 5 years of development. It's a fair old chunk of time.
I know you said you couldn't talk too deeply about the movie, but what was your kind of inspiration for it? What kickstarted that idea for the movie?
We were very angry because this was, take your minds back to 2015. Brexit hadn't happened. Some mental orange guy said he was going to run for president, and everybody was kind of just these guys are jokers. But what we all missed was there was something bubbling away underneath, and these guys were peddling fear to get what they wanted. So that was really the base of it, is how human beings, when they're afraid, can justify the most heinous acts to guarantee their survival. You just go back in time, it just happens again and again and again. So that was the sort of seed. and I'd also read a novel. Well, I can't tell you what it was because it will give away what the film's about. But yeah, I'd read this novel that, and I kind of thought, oh, this would make a really interesting idea. But I mean, I can tell you, like, the film is a horror film set 43,000 years ago. So it's, yeah, sort of dealing with Stone Age people trying to, you know, make a life for themselves, and they encounter something horrible. So that's the sort of, that's the elevator pitch.
And what is that? What's it called for our?
It's called The Origin. The Origin.
And is it, when you say Stone Age people, have you done it? Has it been created purely from imagination, or have you tried to make it as it would have been, as we know?
I've kind of tried to have my cake and eat it. We had an advisor, and you know, so they were able to feed us in on the latest developments and what we know about early modern humans. But also, I sort of said to all my HODs, like, I don't want this to be a National Geographic reenactment, right?
Of course.
We've got to, you know, whether you go and see some Shakespeare or you watch a period film on, you know, in the cinema, what you don't want is the audience to watch it and go, God, they're so like us. What you actually want is to say, no, I am so like them. So it was how do we break down those barriers between the sort of the stereotype of the shaggy-haired caveman or woman versus, you know, where we are now with our refined culture and our wireless headphones and all this bullshit. So it was like, you know, how do you break down that barrier so that you can just present these people as us, and then you can thread through that thing I'm talking about as human beings, do we change? And you know, from that period to now and beyond, like, have we actually evolved that much? So yeah.
And how did you, having done TV and being a sort of director for hire, when did you know that was you were going to take the leap and go and develop my own thing properly, and I'm going to get this made?
It's very difficult at the same time, surely.
Yeah, there's overlap. Like, if you wait for the day when your schedule clears in television, you just won't have the time, you know, because it could happen, you know, if you on a purely financial level, if you've built up a little war chest, you can sort of say, right, I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to develop this feature. But good luck developing your first feature in a year. Like, I haven't seen it happen. Like, you know, like Rose, we have a mutual producer, Oliver Castman, produced my movie and Saint Maud for Rose Glass. You know, Saint Maud was, I think, when I started writing, when Ruth Greenberg, the writer of The Origin, started writing, I think Rose was maybe like 6 months ahead of us. So, you know, even just, Nick Rowland, who I went to film school with, he did Calm with Horses. I think his development process was something similar. Anyway, I digress. I'm just trying to paint a picture that, you know, it's if you're not overlapping the TV work with the film work, you're not. I just don't know how you would do it.
Well,
personally.
Speaking to Lewis the other week, he was saying that they started developing the idea in 2014, 2015, wasn't it, Ollie?
For Des, yeah. They would sit at the dinner table while I was making dinner doing it, because Lewis and I lived together. So, like, yeah, Des has been. I remember him telling me about you know, the serial killer who targeted mostly homosexual men. Like, yeah, that would have been 2014. Yeah, so
and
there you go.
Just how it obviously snowballs from there, because he was telling us a story about they wanted David Tennant on board, and, you know, that happened because Luke's mate happened to go to a party with him or something like that. And just,
I mean, it probably helped that Lewis did Broadchurch as well and was able to build up that rapport. Like, you know,
I think that was after that meeting. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. No, it's you know, yeah, you call it a snowball, but I mean, that's almost too fast. That's like, you know, it's like a piece of dust, so, you know, trickling down Mount Everest. It's so sort of, it feels like it takes forever, and then you look back over your shoulder and it's been 6 years and you go, God, what was I worried about? Like, we made it. But yeah, you've got to hang in there and just keep, if you direct as well, you have to keep your hand in. Like, that was the other thing. I didn't want to be not only financially but creatively, I didn't want to be the director that sits in his pajamas finessing the script, because also I'm not a writer, so I didn't want to be that person who's just like, oh, I'll get the film made, and then you get on set on your first day and you haven't shot anything for 5 years, and you've forgotten that, you've forgotten what to do, you've forgotten how to speak to the actors, you've forgotten to shoot the wide shot first, the basic stuff, because directing's a muscle, and if you're not working it, you do get sloppy, and you keep repeating the same mistakes. So it's I think you've got to have the determination and the energy and the kind of naivety to say, yeah, I'm going to balance all of these things at once and just keep pushing.
You talked about it being
sorry, Charlie. When you were training as a director, or even before that, now you are a director, is it what you thought it was going to be? And what's different about what you thought it was going to be?
It's funny because no, it's exactly what I thought it was going to be. Because when I did my first short for £50, it's still the same thing. Like I remember when I did Clique, I was really nervous. It was my first. I don't know what the budget was in that show, but it was significantly bigger than anything I'd worked with before. And I was sat in they had I'd say trailer. It wasn't a trailer. It was like a 3-way. So you basically got 3 sort of little rooms on this trailer. And I think they felt sorry for me or whatever. So they gave me one of the rooms that nobody was using just for the first morning. And I just sat in there and I was just like, holy shit, man. Like, what am I doing? That imposter syndrome is so real. And then I just went, wait a minute. It's a script you've been working on for 8 weeks. It's actors and a camera. Like nothing has changed since the £50 short. Just, so that's the ingredients are still the exact same. But the harder part is the bit I don't like, or the bit that I wasn't ready for, is the waiting for the project to happen, the waiting for the meeting, the waiting for that producer to call you back, etc. That's harder, because it's out of your control to an extent. When you're on set, you can kind of control it, maybe not the weather, etc. But yeah, that's the stuff that's out of your control. That's much harder to just, there's a lot of sleepless nights, like sort of praying that the project that you're working on is going to get greenlit, or the development money is going to come through before your rent's due, or just that the person you met yesterday likes you. So
I heard my brother recently went for an interview for something. He's a teacher, and however many other applicants there were. And everyone was fussing about it. I'm like, actors, directors do this 3 times a week forever, and you probably know you won't get it. And when you're told you might get it, you then meet them a month down the line, and they say they really like you, and then they don't give it to you, and then you have to watch someone else do it down the line. So it's kind of, there's nothing else really like it.
No, and I've been, you get really good at taking rejection. Like you just, it's part of the job.
Nature. It becomes second nature, and you don't even think about it.
I think actors probably suffer from it far more because they're meeting for, I don't know, 10, 15 things a week. But even,
I wish that was the case.
I was about to say, what actors do you know are getting 10 to 15 auditions a week?
I don't know. I assume. Okay, let's go to lower. 3 to 5. 3 to 5?
So as you can tell, angry actors there.
Yeah. But
which premiere were you in again?
Yeah, exactly.
Come down there.
It's when you do get rejected for stuff. I remember somebody said to me, God, you're taking this so well. It's like, well, what am I going to do? Like curl up in a ball and cry? Like I did that once. Nothing came of it. It's just you've got to try and remember what you're in it for, and just keep going. Like it's having that balance of arrogance and naivety. I remember reading an interview with David Fincher once, and he said, like, if somebody asks you what your film's about, if you can't get up and sell that thing and really sell it, like I'm not talking about the elevator pitch, just talking about speak about it passionately, then you might as well sit down and go home because nobody's interested. Like you've just got to believe that you're the right person to lead 100 people over a hill in the rain to tell the story. And so that's what I mean. You've got to have that kind of super confidence / arrogance, but you've also got to have the naivety of, I'm going to lead 100 people over a hill in the rain to tell a story, and it's going to be great, right? It's tricky. Just got to keep burying that voice that tells you you're not good enough.
But I guess at the point you are now with your project, and probably even earlier, you don't even need to force it, just because you're just being honest. Like, you really do love the film, and you don't even, it becomes part of you, and you, like you say, in your DNA, and you can sell that.
Yeah, but there are days you want to go home. Like, I had 3 days out of a 35-day shoot on the Origin where I just wanted to be anywhere else but on that set, just because I can't. The weather sometimes was terrible. And
you're from Scotland, so it must
I was about to say, it must have been quite something.
Yeah, no, it was bad. I'm sure hopefully, if we're lucky, there'll be Q&As down the line where we can like actually stop a scene and go, you have no idea what was involved here. And you're asking these actors to do like insane things. And they just keep getting up and doing it, and they give so much of themselves. And the film, actually, I think at the end of day 2, I got in the car and I cried. It'd been horrendously tough. And I thought, if every day is going to be like this, we're dead. And then luckily the weather subsided and the storm passed, and we were okay. But there are still a few days where you're either like, you just have a bad day at the office where the way a location was in your head isn't quite right, or the light wasn't quite right, or I've worked with actors, like in my TV work, I've worked with actors that have got injured halfway through a shoot and they can't walk, twisted their ankle or whatever, and so now you've got to reframe everything and rethink your blocking and etc. And my whole mantra is I'm meticulously prepared to throw it all away, but you've still got to do that work. And that's, so there are times where you're tested and you're just thinking, shit, are we going to make our day? Or, it's every day is a challenge to make it to wrap without stretching everybody's patience and goodwill. It's you get better at the basics, but every project or every day is different. I think the day you become an expert and you relax, you might as well leave.
Because you no longer have that energy to just kind of push you through. And
let somebody else have a go. Like, if you're not willing to get on that recce bus anymore and go out there and trundle around these 10 shit locations until you find that great one, then let somebody else get in the truck. You've got to, I think you're always learning. Like, it fries my brain that somebody like Fassbender made the amount of films that he did in such a short space of time, because it's that thing of just wanting to keep learning.
Are we talking about Rainier Werner Fassbender?
Yes, yeah. Like, he made,
it sounds like Fassbender when you say.
I was about to say, I thought he meant Michael.
No, Fassbender.
I think it's the accent. Yeah. Somebody like that, or somebody like, there's a reason, like somebody, whether you like Spielberg or you like Bergman, there's a reason these people are good, and it's because they just kept making stuff. And so you just keep pushing and getting better at your craft, and you'll keep making mistakes and keep learning from them. And you're always, I hope you're always trying to push yourself into new territory, into new types of storytelling, whatever it may be. And the day that you get too relaxed on set, for me, I would get worried if I wasn't nervous, like almost every day before I go on set.
It's like, John Cassavetes' films. He was an actor, like a big actor who was just funding his own small projects and thought no one's going to see these again. And now they're still watched in film schools and sort of celebrated films. So,
totally.
That's when you finish this film completely and it's out and people have watched it, what do you think you'll work on then? There is another project inside you have already bubbling?
Yeah, I didn't have anything, like, as I was coming into the edit. There's a couple of things I was like, well, that may be interesting, or something I'd been developing for a while. But to be honest, the Origin is kind of so ambitious. This is my opinion. The Origin is so ambitious.
Like nothing I know of.
Yeah,
it sounds
definitely.
like nothing. It sounds very original.
So I joked with Oliver when we first kind of started tossing the idea around. I said, like, this is the movie I thought I'd make in 20 years' time if I ever got like Kubrickian levels of autonomy, because it's pretty bonkers to sell. So to actually make it as my first film, it's like, well, whatever comes after this is going to have to scare me the same way. like that this film has, and how you realize it. So I'm just kind of trying to work out like what is that next step, and it's so tricky. Like hopefully, I get the opportunity. Like, you've not taken anything for granted. I hope somebody gives me the opportunity. But yeah, there's a couple of things bubbling away that just recently, actually. I think once you get into the edit, you're quite you become quite receptive to other stuff. Even though I'm not watching stuff, you're letting things percolate, and there's you have more time to talk and discuss things, and it's a lot less chaotic, I suppose, than when you're shooting. So yeah, so there's a two or three things that are sort of bubbling away that might go. And but also, like I said, I'm not a writer, so I think for me it's good that I have a couple of I can maybe have two or three plates spinning that maybe a writer director can't, because I guess, I don't know, maybe can you only work on one project at a time? I think I could. If I was a writer director, I think I could only do one thing, but I'm not a writer. So
in that you're not a writer, how did you go about initially creating the script for The Origin? Was it a case of, I've got this idea, I found a writer, they liked the idea too, and together we made it? Or
so I met Oliver first. Like, it was just a general meeting, and we discussed a few things, and we hit on this idea. And then we met again, and we started putting a treatment together, like a little 3-page, like this happens, this happens, this happens. The characters didn't have names. It was very loose. And then Oliver had optioned a spec script by Ruth Greenberg, who had, I think she just graduated from a script writing course, and had her graduation script. Was really great, actually. Still like one of the best spec scripts I've read. And we met her, and we said, this is what we've got. And she said, this is great. This is what I want to bring to it. And then that was it. Okay. And then we were with Film 4 for a little while, and then we weren't. So we, developing the project over those 4 or 5 years, going on recce's together, just to sort of see the landscapes and stuff. So yeah, it's been great. It's been that sort of, that holy trinity, director, writer, producer, is great, because you can always, there's never a straight, if it's one-on-one, if it's writer, director, producer, you could maybe, there's maybe no outcome to like a discussion or a creative point, but when there's always be someone who can be the deciding vote. So it's really handy. And yeah, I've really loved it, and it was something I'd started developing in film school, actually. Like when I got to film school, that's when I kind of realized I'm not a writer, and it's just been developing that muscle of how you work with writers, and hopefully it's like casting. You cast the right person, so you don't have to, you can trust them to get on with it. And Ruth is great, and she just delivered draft upon draft. It was just getting better and better, and it's a dialogue. Like I'm involved, Oliver's involved. We suggest lines, we suggest set pieces, things but it's Ruth that's doing the hard yards in front of the laptop. So.
And advice to any filmmakers watching, listening to this now, that you would give, that you would have liked back when you started out?
It sounds really obvious, but just keep making stuff. Like there's nothing else for it. I mean, I don't like the cliche going, well, just take one of these and go make something. But also, that's how I would be doing it now. The trickier part, I guess, is how you get your head up above the noise, like, because there's just so much content. But I guess you just keep chipping away. Like I used to help out on the NFTS, and the BFI ran a sort of screen academy for 16-year-olds. And you kind of track a few of these guys, and they're doing it. Like they're all sort of entering the industry now and doing really great work. So I think as long as you just keep going at it, and just also choose your partners carefully. Like you can spend a lot of time cultivating relationships that just don't go anywhere, and you've got to really pick your partners. Like I know for definite that I wouldn't be sitting on a feature if it wasn't for Oliver. Like, so having a good producer is a godsend. This, because a director or writer director, it gets to a point where you can't do it on your own anymore. You've got a base level of craft. You've hopefully got some shots you're happy with, but then you need somebody to champion you. And you've just got to be out there and, hustling, meeting people, and try to. The other thing is just try and shut off that voice that tells you you're not good enough or you don't belong, because that voice doesn't know what it's talking about.
Well, that voice also disappears the longer you kind of show it the stuff you're making. You know, as actors, we do show reels or self-tapes, and the first one you watch, or when you're first starting out, you go, oh my god, I'm awful, how does anybody deal with my voice and all that kind of thing. But the more you see yourself, you can objectively look at it and go, no, this is good, this is why, etc.
Yeah, completely. Like, it's one of my proudest moments on The Origin actually is one of the actors, it's like their first proper job. Like, they had done a few short films, but it was their first proper job, and we showed a cut to them not that long ago, just to, because they'd been begging to see it, and we showed them it, and they said, I watched the cut and I realized I could act. And they've said, like, their self tapes have become easier because they just have a confidence, and also they're able to analytically, like, watch the tapes and go, that take's better than that one, and then that one I was doing something. So yeah, I think it is that. It's kind of getting over yourself, and the only way to do that is to keep pushing. Like, if you sit on your hands and just say, well, one day it'll all click into place and make sense, it won't. You've just got to get through that imposter thing, or that feeling of not feeling good enough, or that insecurity, and then it breeds confidence, doesn't it? Or at least you fake it, right? You fake it until
you do one of them until you believe it yourself, and then it's a case of, well, you're no longer
or you don't believe it and just carry on faking.
Yeah.
Which is what most of us do.
That's it. I mean, I think most people are like, I honestly, genuinely, if anybody gets to a point in this career where they're relaxed and they feel they've climbed the mountains, like, no way, like, there is no end to how you can push yourself. And also, I oftentimes I reach for metaphors to do with sportsmen or sportswomen, because I don't know, it always feels quite apt. But a lot of sports people, they peak early. Like, they peak sort of maybe late 20s, mid 30s. Whereas with this, hopefully, we just keep going. And like, I've worked with actors who were getting no parts in their 20s and 30s, and then all of a sudden they get some character in their face, they've got some lines, and it's like, then shit, they're just getting all the character actor parts because they just have really, and like, there's a guy in The Origin, he hasn't done a lot of work, but I saw his physique and I saw his sort of his look was just next level. It was like, you should be in a Leone Western, like. So it's really, you're constantly developing, whether it's physically and you lean into that, or you learn new skills, or you're traveling, or whatever it is. There's no, you don't ever hang up your boots. Like, so it's you've got to get over yourself.
I think I heard a quote from Judi Dench where she said, this is back when she was doing theatre, and she said, if I can't smell a fart backstage before we begin, I know something's wrong.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. No, totally right. I mean, if the adrenaline, because it's that you need the nerves. Because you've got to keep doing something that scares you.
That nervous energy kind of means you've got skin in the game, don't you?
Yeah.
You care completely enough that you are going as best you can, at least.
Completely. And there's been times on certain things where there's there'll be a plot strand, or there'll be a scene that you're just not feeling, but you've got to kind of get through it and find something in it that you can hold on to, whether it's a performance or it's a shot or something that keeps it fresh for you. So it's not easy. It doesn't come all the time, and it's harder in TV because you're not the originator and it's not your baby. Going back to the midwife analogy. So that's another thing you've got to work at, is like finding that passion for every day you're on set, because then that passes through to the cast and the crew and everything, and they respond to it. Like, when you work on a show that's been running for a long time, and this isn't something that anybody said to me, but you just feel it in the room. It's like when a new director comes in, there's a buzz, there's a lift, because that director's just so fucking happy to be there. And to be paid money to direct, and everybody responds to the new ideas and the energy that's coming. You'd see it a lot on the continuing drama that I did, and even when I did Cold Feet, Like they had 3 new directors that came in for the series I did, series 9. And I did feel like, the cast said as much, that it was great to have all those fresh ideas and that energy. Like people feed off it. So even on the days where you're not feeling it, it's still important I read this great quote from a theatre director called Frank Hauser, and he said that directors act as much as the actors do. And it's so true. Like whether you're acting benevolent or you're acting patient or you're acting like the angry stepdad or whatever you need to do to psychologically get somebody where you need to get them, you're setting the tone for the floor.
And very finally, we always ask, this is the only question we ask all our guests, is there a film that or films that you're ashamed you haven't seen?
Yes. E.T.
Really?
Wow.
Never seen E.T. Never seen E.T.
That is a wrecking ball of a movie
that
to
was an
not
easy
have
one.
seen.
The reason it's an easy one is when my oldest son was 1 year old, my wife bought E.T., bought a DVD of E.T., and it's still in the cellophane, and she said, like, one day you can watch this with him when he's old enough. So it's still in cellophane, it's on the shelf, and I'm just waiting for, because is it a PG?
Yeah,
E.T.?
it's a PG.
I think it must be a PG.
Yeah.
Pretty scary. Like,
and they've added,
Lewis,
and they keep pulling bits out of it. I think there was a scene with the FBI going with guns, and they removed the guns, but then they put the guns back in now, and they've mixed it around quite a lot. There's like 15 editions of it.
Lewis's wife is scared of ET because she saw it too young. So the actual, the extraterrestrial, like, scares the bejesus out of her. So I was kind of like, right, okay, I've got to wait for the right moment. But ET, I never got exposed to it, never saw it. And then by the time I kind of knew what it was, I was watching the X-Files or whatever. And I was like, I'm not going to watch some dorky alien. Dorky, it's like,
I'm
these
watching the
aliens are
next
trying
level
to colonize us.
Yeah.
These guys are trying to colonize us. Like, I'm not going to watch the sort of the friendly alien. Like, who cares about that? So yeah.
Who's the director? Spiled.
Some guy. Yeah, he did Columbo back in the day. He did some episodes of Columbo. Yeah, he's good though, man. He's going places, that guy.
Andrew, you have been brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on to talk to us today with such gusto and energy. It's like a new director has walked in the room. But no, honestly, you've been brilliant. Thank you so much.